Mobile games are kinda crap. It's a well-known fact that most of the stuff available on Play Store is a pay-to-win harpoon aimed at cash whales. It's a reality where unironically mentioning the forbidden name is akin to blasphemy. And it seems that as technology improves, the quality degrades and more of the proverbial meat of the game slips from the bones of the cash shop. But what if I told you that this wasn't always the case, and mobile gaming was, while niche, just an offshoot of the mainstream PC and console community? It had games crafted with love and care, games that I still remember fondly over a decade later, all running on hardware so obsolete it might as well be from the Stone Age. And there were games that I put hundreds of hours into without knowing what microtransactions even looked like. I would probably sound like a lunatic. I don't care. I have proof. Allow me to show you these relics of the past. I just need to rouse this relic from its slumber. By the Omnissiah, let thy blessed 3.7 volt heart pulse once more. Let thy screen bear holy scriptures. Let thy machine spirit embrace its grand purpose. It lives! Back in the school days, the words turn-based and strategy were like the holy grail to me. After all, mobile games at the time, while relatively cheap, were very finite in their entertainment value. You would play them during break time or on the toilet until every button press becomes a muscle memory and the pixels get burned into your corneas. That's not a complaint, by the way. As someone who grew up on the Sega, I readily accepted that the entertainment value equals replaying the same collection of games ad nausea. They also tended to be linear affairs, where the playthroughs differed only by the amount of restarts I had to burn through. When I first saw the premise of Ancient Empires released in 2004 by Macrospace, I started twitching and salivating uncontrollably as the words turn-based and strategy instantly meant replayability. The fantasy setting was just a cherry on top. The game has two modes, the skirmish and the campaign. The campaign is also the tutorial, the lore dump, and the part that had the most attention in development. It's structured into 7 story chapters, taking between 5 minutes to finish the chapter or 5 minutes to move all of my units. Your first few missions explain the basics. It doesn't take long because there's very little to explain. Each unit has a movement range. After it moves, it can't move again for the rest of the turn. You attack by moving within range, which for the most units is directly left or right, up or down from the enemy. If in melee, the attacking units hit first, and then the enemy units retaliate. Kill the enemy king, and you win. You make gold by capturing and holding villages and castles, and make more units by buying them in the castle when your king is stationed inside. So far, so simple. The complexity begins by looking at the maps. Each one consists of individual tiles that a unit may occupy, and each provides a benefit to defense at the expense of movement. Roads provide no defense, but let you move around the fastest. Standing on a hill gives a defense boost. Mountains give a large defense boost, but some units must start the turn in an adjacent tile in order to travel up. Clever positioning can and will win you fights, so pick your tiles with care. It also adds a lot of charm to the game. PC gaming often has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to graphics, with supporting hardware carrying games by sheer fidelity. Phone games of that era, on the other hand, had to scrape the barrel so hard they hit the dirt beneath it. Without raw power to produce visuals, the devs had to rely on style, and I think they did great. The color palette is crisp and colorful, the sprites have a cartoony charm to them. This is where the love and care put into the game really shines. Macrospace added little bits of polish where they really didn't have to. The water, for example, is not a static blue block, it is animated with a little flow to it. The combat animations also take account of whatever terrain you and the opponent are standing on. Hell, just having the animation in the first place is completely unnecessary. You can turn it off and it does not affect the gameplay in the slightest. The units just clobber each other without theatrics.
Get wild!
Ah yes, speaking of the units, this is, I think, the most polished and thought out part of the game. Each one has a special ability or fills a specific niche. For example, your basic footman is also your tax collector, as they are the only ones who can capture villages, and so they remain useful from early to late game. The archer is slightly more expensive, but can attack at range with no retaliation. Lizards have extra mobility and defenses when in water. Wizards can be killed by a stiff breeze, but will happily violate Geneva Conventions by raising corpses to fight for you. Wisps are absolute Geneva killjoys and will flashbang your skeletons, as well as providing an attack buff aura. Spiders move fast and debuff targets they bite. Golems are walking roadblocks that you put into a village and forget that said village exists because it is safe. Catapults can outrange even the archers, but can't move and attack the same turn. Dragons identify as attack helicopters, disregarding any terrain movement penalties and having the highest damage and price tag of any unit. Coincidentally, they also get shredded by 2 squads of archers that cost half their total price. The king is tough, but you must keep them alive, and they need to be stationed at the keep to buy units. Venturing out to capture a neutral keep becomes a double risk-reward. Your main unit becomes vulnerable, and you won't get reinforcements for a few turns. But if you succeed, you'll have a forward base and an extra source of income. It's an extremely simple system, and for anyone who played real-time or turn-based strategy before, this is nothing new. Keep in mind though that this game is only 125 kilobytes. Simplicity is what makes it work. There is no point in having a roster the length of a toilet roll if you just wipe with it and only spam the OP units. There is an actual, dare I say it, strategy to think of. Sure, with 1000 gold I can fill the wyvern, but peasants with sharp sticks eat them for breakfast. What I'm saying is, even your early units will return many times their value as long as they survive. Make sure you heal them by putting them into a keep or a village under your control. The AI makes extensive use of this as it pulls out injured units consistently around quarter health. Actually, the AI in itself deserves a separate mention. Like the game, it's very simple, and simplicity is what makes it viable. It plays aggressively and does not hesitate to hippity-hoppity repossess your property. It gangs up and pile drives your injured units before you can withdraw them. One time it even sent a raiding party into my flank through a river to get my villages while my main force was committed elsewhere. What I'm saying is, it works, which is more than I can say about some other modern games. Maybe you should move. With the praise, however, I must also level some criticisms. The AI can sometimes do stupid things. One mission seems to be strangely scripted, where units will patrol on predetermined paths and completely ignore nuisances such as a sword to the face. It also doesn't seem to understand to not feed the golem. Ultimately, a strategy game lives and dies by how replayable it is, and this is Ancient Empire's biggest flaw. The game is divided into 2 parts, skirmish and campaign. I'll start with the former. It's a 1v1 mode against an enemy king with 1000 gold each and all units unlocked. If it sounds like a fun time, it is. Sort of. A few games is all it took for me to figure out that while AI plays aggressively, it is not very good at countering aggression. If anything, your biggest enemy are your own shiny expensive units which empty your coffers and quickly stunt your economy as a result. It will also never move the king to try and capture neutral keeps. I'm not saying it's a pushover, but on equal footing with a human player, it is far from hard. A far bigger detraction is the amount of maps available to play. There's only 2. I can praise the art style all day, but staring at the same 2 sets of pixels over and over does get grating. Thankfully, I can still gush a little praise. Skirmish has one big feature that keeps me coming back, and that is the hot seat multiplayer. Instead of AI, the red player can be put under human control, and once you take your turn, you just pass the phone over to your friend. No Bluetooth or second copy of the game required. If only it had a bit more variety. Psst, keep that in mind. It will be very important later. Things are different in the campaign, however. Map variety is up to 7, and the maps have extra tricks up their sleeves. Sometimes there will be ambushes. Sometimes there will be friendly units joining your side. Sometimes the game will throw you a curveball and turn into a tactics game where you must make do with limited units and support. Regular missions go from save funny lizards from spiders to the rumbling. Also, The maps get bigger, and with every level beaten, your roster expands together with potential economy to play around with. I would put up a spoiler warning for this story, if it didn't read like an adult movie script written by John Carmack. You are Galamar, and Valadorn is your brother. One fine day, he stabs you in the back, and you race him back to the capital, Thorin, expanding the menagerie of troops under your command. Your first order of business is helping out the lizard folk against the spiders. Next, you pass by the wizard's tower. Plot twist, your brother has already passed through, and the evil mages have joined his side. Are they evil because of the shambling undead they have raised? No, of course not. That is perfectly acceptable behavior for the magically gifted. Vandalizing the kingdom's infrastructure, though... unacceptable.
Unacceptable!
A little further on, you stop by a city of Valtellen, who asked for your help to repel your brother's surprise attack, and you get to play with wisps and catapults. As you continue on your way to Thorin, scouts spot your brother's forces holding some wyverns in captivity, and that is too good of an opportunity to pass by. One daring rescue later, and you have your super unit for the grand finale. Or at least one half of the grand finale, as your brother shows up on your flank with fresh forces, almost as if by magic. So you plow through his forces backwards, once more, and then, plot twist, it was a demon lord mind-controlling your brother all along, and once your brother was no longer demons, they all lived happily ever after. Ancient Empires was a flawed game, no doubt about it, but how they managed to do so much with such limited platform is nothing short of stunning, and the game has multiplayer, on a device that takes Wi-Fi to mean some kind of voodoo magic. Even a flawed diamond is still a diamond, and there is clear love, care and soul that went into the project. So do I recommend playing this? Sure, once. Why? Because Ancient Empires 2 exists. This whole video has been pretext up to this point. Checkmate. Ancient Empires 2 was released just a year later in June 2005, and if I could summarize it in one sentence, it would be Macrospace looking back at their previous work and saying, make more better. And they did exactly that. Best parts of Ancient Empires 1 were kept in, while the lacking parts were taken, pulled apart, and given an inch-thick layer of polish. Let us begin. The first change can be seen, or rather heard, as soon as you start the game. Ancient Empires 1 has this short jingle. And this is how Ancient Empires 2 greets you. The actual first thing you see is the recap of the first game and the vague prophecy introducing the events of the second. Yeah, we have prophecies now, we have evolved past the pre-mission text blurbs, but we will come back to those. Oh, we will come back to those, don't worry. As with the first game, I will start with the skirmish, and this is quite an improvement. In fact, this mode alone justifies this game's existence. The roster has been expanded to 12 maps, and the number of players has been bumped up to 4. Another awesome new feature is the pre-game customization screen. Here you can set up which players will be human, set up teams, starting gold, and unit caps. As far as school break game sessions went, this was the legit hot seat experience. The variety of maps fixes the biggest gripe I've had with the old game, through both variety and design. I'm not sure how to even quantify that when you're comparing this to just 2 basic maps of Ancient Empires 1. It's an astronomical improvement through sheer variety, let's just leave it at that. You won't have all of them available to you by default, however, instead they will unlock as you beat the campaign maps. Don't worry, we will get to that. As the game is now set in winter, i.e. the best setting possible, The palette is quite different to the first. The greens have been largely reduced to the forest tiles, with white taking over the majority of screen space. But you will hear no complaints from me. The look and feel of European winter setting wakes up something cozy deep inside my soul. Winter makes everything better. Alright, back to work. The pixel art of Ancient Empires 1 was already great, and Ancient Empires 2 builds up on its foundations by giving it a little touch-up. Backgrounds are just a little more detailed. Buildings are just a little cozy. Units are just a little bit cuter. Animations are just a little bit richer. We even got unique models for each of the 4 commanders. We'll get to that. All of the first game's units make a comeback, with some of them getting a little rebranding. Spiders are now venomous wolves, the lizard people are now elementals, and the wyverns are now right and proper dragons. There have been some mechanical changes too, with the catapult getting an ability to make own dwellings unowned, and with the commander finally being free to leave the castle and fight without impacting recruitment. They also get the option to be revived for a gold fee, should you lose them. So early aggression is incentivized. Of course, the castle will not always be available. I best address the Storm Dragon in the dwelling. The variety of maps Ancient Empires 2 brought to the table cemented its replayability, but it was the campaign that truly seared this game into my brain. And I don't mean that this game has a campaign, no, I mean if the first game was Doom, then this is Doom 2016. It has no business being this competent. The story starts with a brief acknowledgement of the previous game's existence, and that's about it. The 2 brothers rule the kingdom, everything is butterflies and blowjobs, except there is a cryptic prophecy of the 3 crystals that could make or unmake the world. Thankfully, they are kept in well-guarded monasteries safe from evil. Oh. So the temple is under attack by an unknown force and Valadorn intervenes. Of course, it's the demons. From the get-go, the game throws you into a mission with the castle, and it is a tendency that will continue. You only have your basic 2 units to begin with, but even pebbles can become an avalanche when amassed properly. It doesn't take long for the Yellow Castle to fall and for the adventures to truly begin. Compared to the first game, the mission difficulty has definitely been dialed up. Your enemies tend to start with an economy advantage or spawn in higher tier units compared to yours, and you know what? That's fine. For the first 2 missions, the disparity is quite manageable. Numerical disadvantage? Try to focus fire. Direwolf Pack got you sent. Time to enter the Bone Zone. That brings me straight to the map design. It is solid. In fact, I remember most of the missions purely because of how their maps are designed and how I had to adapt my tactics to the terrain. Mission 4 is where the kitty gloves really come off and get thrown into your face. Galamar arrives just in time to save the second crystal, and by that I mean he arrives moments before the siege actually begins. The map is big and has a prominent flank with a lot of economy buildings. They start under your control, but that is quite a distance from the castle, and the Demon Lord will happily repossess them within a few turns. You don't get to lounge around and turtle, you need to throw units down their throat immediately, all the while defending the central choke point. Pretty sure this is the first mission where I felt a little dread with every end turn. It's hard, but it's fun hard, because once you get your flank secure, you can pull exactly the same raiding tactics that your opponent uses. And for the choke point, let's say that all that extra tax funding really helped my artillery program get underway.
I's gonna shoot 'em all!
One other mechanic that has received an upgrade since the first game is unit promotion. Units receive XP as they do damage to enemies, and that increases their rank. In the first game, it was just a flavor thing, but in Ancient Empires 2, you actually get stat boosts and a fancy new title every 2 levels. And those increments really do add up. Your footmen may begin as tax collectors, but with enough crackdowns, they can get promoted to the IRS menace. Your basic archers throw sticks, but your elite rangers are walking ballistas, and the golem? Oh god, don't feed the golem! And let me be perfectly clear, keeping experienced units alive is not a suggestion. Fair warning, spoilers ahead. If you care to keep your experience pure, then skip to here. So, let's talk story. Apart from the vague doomsday prophecy, we know nothing about the crystals, only that the demon lords are willing to commit substantial resources to obtain them. Both Galamar and Valadorn get their perspectives told consecutively. The aforementioned defense is the first time their side gets ahead and gets their hands on one of the crystals. Naturally, Galamar wants the thing under lock and key in the capital, so he takes a few good men and rushes his prize home through a treacherous mountain pass. It takes about 5 seconds for the ambushes to start, and they only get meaner. The crystal can't pass through the mountains, so the path is your only option. Your other units, on the other hand, can pass through the mountain tile, and the first time playing through this, I thought I was being smart by sending soldiers ahead to capture dwellings, so that we'll have fortified points to heal at. Turns out that ambushes get triggered by any unit, not just the crystal we are escorting, and that you can trigger several of them in a row. Thankfully, you get a sorceress to get some rattle lads going, and given what you're facing, in the end, you really do want them. This is where I'm gonna stop gushing about the things the game does right and point out some wrongs. I don't like this mission. No build isn't a new concept in strategy, and it can be a great way to emphasize a tactical approach over Unga Bunga. Story-wise, it serves to lead you into the endgame, and gameplay-wise, it offers a slow, more methodical action after this clusterfuck. That is, in theory. In practice, it slows the game down to an absolute crawl, because after every triggered ambush, you will sit your units down for a turn or two of healing. There is no getting around it, as you have no source of new units, and the fights get quite brutal. At the same time, there is no turn limit and no pursuit force on your heals, so there is literally zero consequence for dallying, which in turn means those fights are not difficult, just tedious. Similar sentiment goes for the next mission, where Valadorn just runs into a fight while on his way to meet up with his brother. There are no new units introduced in this mission, no particular twist to the map layout, it's just as if a skirmish map was thrown into the mix to pad out the campaign. As far as complaints go, 15 minutes of tedium and one count of more of the same are far from the worst things I could say though. And we get right back on track with the good stuff, as there are only 2 missions left. Galamar makes his way to the capital when the game introduces its ultimate unit, the dragon. But not for you. This mission may seem brutal, but it is actually a comedy disguised as a tragedy, because Brother Dearest Valadorn is here and he brought one hell of a backup. The dragons here are arguably even more OP than in the first game, as map design means ground units need to slog it out over choke points. The dragons do not care for that concept, and rightfully so, since I paid 1000 gold to own the map, I will use the entire fucking map. And just as suddenly as it all began, the battle finishes and we enter the finale. Yeah, the prophecies were not kidding about the life and death thing. Apparently the gods have left an orbital laser somewhere in the stratosphere of the planet, and now the bad guy has all the Chaos Emeralds to make it work. That is unfortunate. What is even more unfortunate is that Sayath sits well behind his ally, who has an economy insane enough to keep chucking unit after unit at you, all the while his boss Divine Wraths your entire army. And yes, I said ally, not allies. All those castles and villages belong to the same player, never mind that he has 2 commanders. This is how you do the culmination of the story. This is where all your skills in positioning, target priority, army composition and finance management comes in. This is the swan song of the game and it is excellent. This mission is my core memory of the game, and surrounding the ancient ruins with my veteran troops to paint the walls with Say's atomized insides is the send-off it deserves. Having now played both games back to back, I think I can finally pinpoint why I like the second one so much more. Ancient Empires 1 was a successful proof of concept. It set up the mechanics well enough that they remained largely unchanged until the second game came around, but it came at the cost of making other key features rather bare bone. Ancient Empires 2 took the excellent foundation and built an actual game around it. The campaign became just that, a story with a coherent plot hook, good pacing and satisfying conclusion. The missions experimented with their format and did a whole lot more than 1v1 me bro with an AI opponent. It is no Warcraft 3 in that regard of course, but it doesn't need to be. The gameplay is at the forefront, but the story backs it up rather than hanging about the design board, cautiously peeking in every now and then. It is minimalist, almost like a fairy tale. There are good guys, there are bad guys. Good guys ultimately win, you just get to see firsthand the mountains of gore they had to wade through to do that. Personal drama, like the soldier cheating on the sorceress and getting raised as a skeleton meat shield, just would not fit in. This is a good example of less is more, especially considering the format. This isn't gaming on a string budget, this is gaming on a monomolecular fiber. Even though mobile games were not limited by cartridge size, as say Sega games were, the devs were still hard-pressed to keep the file size low. Thankfully for macro space, the soul needs no storage space, it just needs to be included. Thank you very much for taking time to stop by and watch me ramble. I do hope to do so again in the future. There are plenty more gems hidden within .jar format, such as Doom with a storyline. Until then, take care.